Nolan Curtis had 8 seconds to decide whether to intervene or protect his daughter. Through the dim fluorescent lights of the underground parking garage, he watched 3 armed men surround a woman in a designer suit, their guns glinting under the harsh lighting. His hands tightened on his daughter's shoulders as the lead robber pressed a weapon against the woman's temple. 8 seconds. That's all it took for the former Special Forces operative turned elementary school janitor to neutralize the threat, save billionaire tech CEO Amber Maxwell, and unknowingly set in motion a series of revelations that would shatter both their worlds. Because what Nolan didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the woman whose life he just saved was the same person whose company's algorithm had denied his late wife the experimental treatment that could have saved her life. Some people call it fate. Others call it cruel irony. Nolan Curtis would soon call it the beginning of everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Xavier Grant sat in his rusted sedan across from the Meridian Tower parking garage, fingers drumming against the steering wheel with methodical precision. The photograph taped to his dashboard showed a smiling woman with bright eyes and an infectious laugh. His wife, gone for 3 years now, taken by a disease that shouldn't have killed her, taken by a system that valued profit margins over human lives. Tonight, he whispered to the photograph, justice finally arrives. He checked his watch. Amber Maxwell, CEO of Nextech Solutions, worked late every Thursday. Her schedule was predictable, her security detail minimal after hours. She believed her wealth and position made her untouchable. Xavier was about to prove her wrong. Across the city in the penthouse suite of the Ashford Building, Amber Maxwell stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the glittering skyline of Brookhaven. At 38, she'd built Nextech Solutions from a small startup into a $5 billion empire. Her company's artificial intelligence algorithms now determined everything from loan approvals to insurance coverage for millions of Americans. The awards lining her mahogany shelves told a story of relentless success. Tech Innovator of the Year, Forbes 40, Under 40. The glossy magazine covers featuring her face were artfully displayed on Italian marble countertops. Yet as she scrolled through her phone, not a single personal message appeared. Only business notifications, board meeting agendas, stock price alerts. Her reflection in the darkened window showed a woman who had everything except what mattered. No family, no close friends, just colleagues, employees, and competitors. She glanced at a framed photograph tucked in the corner of her desk. A younger Amber at her college graduation, standing alone. 2 empty chairs where her parents should have been. They'd been too busy with their own careers to attend. She'd sworn then never to need anyone, to build walls so high that disappointment couldn't reach her. Now those walls felt less like protection and more like a prison. Her phone buzzed. A reminder about tomorrow's board presentation. Nextech's new health assessment algorithm had reduced insurance claim approvals by 18%. Saving partner companies millions. The board would be thrilled. Amber tried to feel something about it, but found only numbness. Across town in a modest apartment in the Oak Ridge district, Nolan Curtis hunched over a small kitchen table, carefully wrapping a birthday present. At 37, the former Special Forces operative carried the weight of several lifetimes in the lines around his eyes, and the silver beginning to appear at his temples. The gift was a science kit, something his daughter Lily had been wanting for months. He'd saved for 3 months by picking up extra janitorial shifts at Pembroke Elementary, the school where both he worked and Lily attended 4th grade. The kit cost $60, a small fortune on his salary, but worth every penny to see her face light up tomorrow morning. Setting the wrapped gift aside, Nolan pulled out a worn notebook and studied his monthly budget. The numbers told a stark story. Rent for their 2-bedroom apartment, utilities, groceries, Lily's school supplies, and the crushing medical bills from his wife's cancer treatments. 4 years after Rebecca's death, and he was still paying for the care that couldn't save her. At the bottom of the page, circled in red, Lily's birthday dinner, $150. 2 months of careful saving, skipping lunches, walking instead of taking the bus. Also, his 9-year-old could feel special on her birthday. A memory flashed unbidden. Rebecca in her hospital bed, skin translucent, fingers gripping his with surprising strength despite her weakness. "Promise me," she'd whispered, her voice barely audible above the medical equipment's steady beeping. "Promise you'll teach Lily that love matters more than success, more than money, more than being right about everything." He'd nodded, throat too tight for words, and held her until her final breath faded into silence. In her bedroom, Lily Curtis lay awake. Moonlight streaming through curtains decorated with planets and stars. Her small desk overflowed with drawings, colorful pencil illustrations of a family of 3, though one figure always floated above the others, surrounded by clouds and constellations. "Mommy in heaven, watching us," she'd explained to her teacher last week when asked about her artwork. Lily slipped from her bed and padded quietly to the bathroom, where she carefully arranged her father's medication in the weekly organizer. The orange prescription bottles lined up like soldiers, sleep aids for the nights when nightmares came, when he cried out in his sleep, reliving moments from a past he never discussed with her. She didn't fully understand what PTSD meant, but she understood that sometimes her daddy fought invisible battles even when he was safe at home. She'd learned to recognize the signs, the distant look in his eyes, the way his hands would shake slightly when loud noises startled him, the careful way he positioned himself in rooms to see all the exits. Before returning to bed, Lily stopped by the refrigerator, where a hand-drawn invitation was held by a magnet. Lily's 9th birthday celebration, Harborview Grill, 6 p.m. She'd created it herself, in art class, complete with drawings of birthday cake and balloons. Tomorrow she'd wear her best dress, the blue one with white flowers that her mom had bought her before getting sick. Tomorrow she'd pretend they were a normal family, even if just for one evening. In a cramped apartment on the industrial side of Brookhaven, Xavier Grant stared at photographs spread across his coffee table. Images of Amber Maxwell at charity galas, tech conferences, magazine photo shoots. Always impeccably dressed, always projecting confidence and control, never showing a hint of the devastation her company's algorithms had caused to families like his. "She has no idea," he muttered to himself. "No idea how many lives her precious efficiency has destroyed." His wife, Diana, had been only 34 when the rare autoimmune disease struck. Nextech's health assessment algorithm, used by their insurance provider, had flagged her experimental treatment as statistically unlikely to succeed and denied coverage. The appeal process took 4 months. Diana had died in 3. Xavier had been a data analyst before grief consumed him. He understood algorithms, probability matrices, risk assessments. He knew that behind every denial was a human life, reduced to numbers and percentages. His wife had been categorized as a 19% success probability. Not profitable. Enough to approve. He'd spent 2 years trying the legal route. Lawyers, appeals, media attention. Nothing worked. The system protected itself. Companies like Nextech operated behind layers of corporate structure and legal immunity. The algorithm was just following its programming. No one was responsible. No one was accountable. So Xavier had decided to become the accountability that the system lacked. His phone buzzed. A text from his accomplices. 2 other men whose lives had been destroyed by Nextech's algorithms were in position. Meridian Tower Garage, Level 3. She just entered the elevator. Xavier grabbed his mask and weapon, checking the chamber one final time. Tonight, Amber Maxwell would understand what it felt like to be powerless. To have your fate decided by forces beyond your control. To beg for mercy from a system designed to have none. He started his car, pulling out into the evening traffic of Brookhaven. Across the city, Nolan Curtis was helping Lily pick out her outfit for tomorrow's birthday dinner, completely unaware that in less than 24 hours, His life and Amber Maxwell's would collide in 8 seconds that would change everything. The city moved through its evening rhythms, millions of individual stories intersecting and diverging like threads in an impossibly complex tapestry. Some intersections were gentle, forgettable. Others were violent, transformative, impossible to undo. Tonight would be one of the latter. The Harborview Grill occupied the ground floor of an upscale complex in downtown Brookhaven. Its warm lighting and seafood aromas, a stark contrast to the cold concrete of the Meridian Tower parking garage 4 blocks away. Nolan Curtis held Lily's hand as they approached the restaurant entrance, his daughter practically bouncing with excitement. "Do you think they'll sing Happy Birthday?" Lily asked, adjusting the blue flower dress that she'd insisted on wearing despite the evening chill. "If you want them to, I'll make sure they do," Nolan promised, though the thought of drawing attention made him uncomfortable. Years of special operations training had conditioned him to blend into backgrounds, to be forgettable. But for Lily, he'd endure a chorus of restaurant staff and curious diners. They were 15 minutes early for their reservation. Nolan had learned long ago that being early meant controlling variables, assessing environments, identifying potential problems before they materialized. Even something as simple as a birthday dinner required tactical awareness. Old habits died hard. "Can we walk past the fountain?" Lily asked, pointing to the decorative water feature in the plaza between the restaurant and the adjacent parking structure. "Mommy used to love fountains." Nolan's chest tightened, but he nodded. 5 minutes, then we need to check in for our table. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Lily ran ahead to the fountain, Nolan's phone buzzed. A text from his supervisor at Pembroke Elementary. "Curtis, can you cover the weekend custodial shift? Jenkins called in sick. Double pay." He calculated quickly. Double pay meant an extra $120. That could cover next month's electricity bill or put a significant dent in the medical debt. He typed back, "I'll take it." Lily called out to him, asking him to watch her toss a penny into the fountain. "I'm wishing that Mommy can see me from heaven tonight," she said solemnly, before flinging the coin into the water. At that exact moment, 4 blocks away in the Meridian Tower parking garage, Amber Maxwell stepped out of her private elevator onto level 3. Her heels clicked against concrete as she walked toward her designated space where her black Tesla waited. She scrolled through emails on her phone, barely noticing her surroundings. The garage was nearly empty at this hour. Most employees left by 6. Only executives and workaholics remained. And Amber was usually the last to leave. Her security detail had offered to escort her, but she'd waved them off. The garage was supposedly secure, monitored by cameras, accessible only with key cards. What could happen? She was 20 feet from her vehicle when 3 men emerged from behind a concrete pillar. Xavier Grant moved first, his weapon rising to point directly at Amber's chest. His 2 accomplices, Preston Ford and Ashton Walsh, fanned out to block her escape routes. All 3 wore dark clothing and masks that concealed their features. "Amber Maxwell," Xavier said, his voice distorted by rage and adrenaline. "We need to have a conversation." Amber's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against the concrete. Her first instinct was to run, but Preston was already behind her, cutting off that option. Her second instinct was to scream. But Ashton pressed a gun against her temple, and the scream died in her throat. "Wallet, phone, jewelry," Preston demanded, grabbing her designer purse and dumping its contents onto the ground. "Now." But Xavier wasn't interested in robbery. He pulled off his mask, wanting her to see his face, to understand this was personal. "Do you recognize me?" he asked. 3 years ago, you probably approved the algorithm update that killed my wife." Amber's mind raced, trying to place the face, trying to understand. "I don't know what you're talking about," she managed to say, voice shaking. "Of course you don't," Xavier laughed bitterly. "We're just numbers to people like you. Data points, acceptable losses in your profit margins." Back at the fountain, Nolan checked his watch. "Time to go, Sweetheart, we don't want to lose our reservation. As they walked toward the restaurant, Lily suddenly stopped. Daddy, I need to use the bathroom before dinner. Can you wait until we're inside? It's an emergency, Lily insisted with the urgency only a 9-year-old could muster. Nolan sighed, scanning the area. The Meridian Tower had a lobby with public restrooms, just across the plaza. Faster than waiting for the restaurant. All right, quick trip. But we need to hurry. They entered the Prestowants, Meridian Tower lobby, and Nolan directed Lily to the restrooms near the elevator bank. I'll wait right here, he told her. Don't talk to strangers. While Lily disappeared into the bathroom, Nolan stood in the lobby, instinctively scanning his surroundings. Years of training made situational awareness as natural as breathing. He noted the security guard at the front desk, the camera positions, the exit routes, the elevator access requiring key cards for upper floors but not for the parking garage. A businessman hurried past, heading for the garage elevator. As the doors opened, Nolan caught a glimpse of the level indicator. Level 3. Something in his gut twisted, a sensation he'd learned never to ignore. The same instinct that had kept him alive through countless operations in hostile territory. He moved closer to the garage elevator, listening. Concrete structures carried sound in strange ways. Was that shouting? Or just the echo of car engines? Lily emerged from the bathroom. All better. Can we go eat now? Nolan hesitated, torn between his daughter's birthday dinner and the nagging sense that something was wrong. The elevator dinged, doors opening to reveal an empty car. The shouting was clearer now. Definitely raised voices. A woman's scream, abruptly cut off. His training screamed at him to investigate. His father's instincts screamed at him to get Lily away from potential danger. Change of plans, he said quietly, kneeling to Lily's level. I need you to walk back to the restaurant. Tell the host we'll be there in 5 minutes. But Daddy, Lily. His tone was firm but gentle. Remember what we practiced? If I use my serious voice, you listen and don't ask questions. Go to the restaurant, stay with the host, I'll be there very soon. Lily's eyes widened with understanding. They'd practiced this scenario, though he'd hoped never to use it. Okay, Daddy, be safe. She walked toward the exit, glancing back once before disappearing through the glass doors. Nolan watched until she was clearly heading toward the restaurant, then pressed the elevator button for the parking garage. As the elevator descended, he steadied his breathing, centering himself. Whatever situation waited below, he'd assess first, act only if necessary. He was a janitor now, not an operator. His priority was getting back to Lily's birthday dinner. The elevator doors opened onto level 3. Through the dim fluorescent lighting, Nolan immediately assessed the scene. 3 armed men. 1 woman in a business suit on her knees. Weapons visible. Hostage situation. Distance, approximately 40 feet. Cover, concrete pillars at 15-foot intervals. Exits, 2 stairwells, 1 vehicle ramp. The lead gunman had his weapon pressed against the woman's head, shouting about algorithms and denied treatments and justice. The other 2 were arguing about whether to take her somewhere else or finish it here. Nolan had 8 seconds before they noticed him. 8 seconds to decide, return to the elevator and call police, or intervene. 8 seconds to choose between the safe option and the right option. 8 seconds to remember Rebecca's final words about teaching Lily what really matters. His body moved before his mind finished calculating the risks. Nolan's military training activated like a switch being flipped. His heartbeat slowed. His vision sharpened. Time seemed to dilate, each second stretching into an eternity of calculated possibility. He cataloged the tactical situation with clinical precision. Xavier Grant, though Nolan didn't yet know his name, stood closest to Amber Maxwell. His weapon, a 9mm handgun, was pressed against her temple. His finger was on the trigger, but his grip was emotional rather than trained. Amateur, dangerous because of unpredictability, not skill. Preston Ford held a similar weapon but kept it pointed at the ground, clearly uncomfortable with the violence escalating beyond his expectations. His body language screamed hesitation, weak link. Ashton Walsh was the most concerning. He held his weapon with familiarity, scanning the environment with practiced awareness. Former law enforcement or private security, Nolan guessed. He'd be the one to react first. Nolan stepped out from the elevator alcove, hands visible but not raised, submissive enough not to trigger immediate response, but ready to move if needed. "Easy there," he said, voice calm and level. "Nobody needs to make this worse than it already is." All three men spun toward him. Xavier's gun shifted away from Amber's head for a crucial second. Ashton's weapon came up, trained on Nolan's chest. Preston looked between his accomplices, panicking. "Who the hell are you?" Xavier demanded. "Just someone heading to dinner with his daughter," Nolan replied, taking a measured step forward. "Heard shouting, wanted to make sure everyone's okay." "Do we look okay?" Ashton snapped. "Turn around and walk away. This doesn't concern you." Nolan's eyes never left Xavier's face. "Seems like it concerns everyone here. Whatever happened to you, whatever you think she did, this isn't the answer." Xavier's composure cracked. "You don't know what she did. What her company did. My wife died because their algorithm decided she wasn't worth saving. Died begging me to fix it, and I couldn't. I was powerless." For a moment, genuine sympathy flickered across Nolan's face. "I understand that feeling. Lost my wife to cancer 4 years ago. Treatment denied, appeals rejected. I know exactly how powerless feels." The admission hung in the air, creating an unexpected connection. Xavier lowered his weapon slightly, searching Nolan's face for deception and finding only truth. "Then you understand why this has to happen," Xavier said. "People like her need to face consequences. The system protects them. Someone has to make them accountable." "And then what?" Nolan asked, taking another step closer. "You pull that trigger, and your wife's death means nothing. You become just another violent statistic. Is that the legacy you want? Is that what she would want?" Xavier's hand trembled. "Don't you dare talk about what Diana would want. You didn't know her." "You're right, I didn't. But I knew Rebecca. And I know she wouldn't want me to destroy other lives because I couldn't save hers." Nolan's voice softened. "The pain doesn't go away. It never goes away. But adding more pain to the world doesn't balance the scales. It just creates more families like yours." Ashton shifted impatiently. "Xavier, we need to move. That elevator means someone could come down any second." But Xavier seemed frozen, locked in Nolan's gaze. In that moment, Amber Maxwell saw something that terrified her more than the gun against her head. She saw two men who understood each other on a level she couldn't comprehend. Two men who'd lost everything to a system she represented. Two men who had every reason to let her die. "Please," she whispered. Voice breaking. "I have a company, employees who depend on me, projects that..." "Projects?" Xavier laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "My wife was a project to your algorithm. High risk, low probability of success, not worth the investment." He turned back to Nolan. "She doesn't even remember. Probably approved the update that killed Diana without even reading the details. That's how little our lives matter to people like her." Nolan was now within 15 feet, striking distance if needed, but still attempting verbal de-escalation. "You're right. The system is broken. She probably doesn't remember because she processes thousands of decisions without understanding the human cost. But that's exactly why this won't work." "Explain," Xavier demanded. "You pull that trigger, she becomes a martyr. The system closes ranks, protects itself. Nothing changes. But if you walk away now, if you let the anger drive you toward real change rather than violence, you might actually make a difference." Preston spoke up, voice shaking. "Xavier, man, I didn't sign up for murder. You said we'd scare her. Make a statement. This has gone too far." "Shut up, Preston," Ashton snapped. But doubt flickered across his face too. Nolan pressed his advantage. "How old was your wife when she died?" Xavier blinked, thrown by the question. 34. Rebecca was 33. "How long were you married?" 12 years. Since college. 14 for us. High school sweethearts. Nolan's voice carried the weight of shared grief. You know what the worst part is? Not the anger. Anger is clean, simple. The worst part is the guilt. Wondering if you could have done something different, fought harder, found another way. Xavier's weapon dipped further. Every day. Every single day I think about what I should have done differently. Killing her won't ease that guilt. It'll just add more. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, wondering if this moment was when you finally lost the last part of yourself that your wife would recognize. Nolan took another step. Is that who you want to be? Is that the man Diana married? For a long moment, the parking garage was silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and Amber's quiet sobbing. Xavier's resolve was crumbling, the fury that had sustained him for months, finally meeting its match in someone who truly understood his pain. Then Ashton made his choice. This is done. Xavier, put the gun down, or I will. He raised his weapon, pointing it at Xavier rather than at Nolan or Amber. The betrayal was complete. Ash, what are you doing? Preston gasped. I signed up to scare a billionaire, not commit murder in front of a witness. I'm not going down for this. Ashton's eyes were cold, calculating. Everyone stays calm. We all walk away. Xavier drops his weapon. We leave separately, never speak again. Deal. But Xavier wasn't listening. The final thread of his control snapped. If I can't make her pay, then what was the point? What was any of it for? He swung his gun back toward Amber's head, finger tightening on the trigger. Nolan moved. 8 seconds had elapsed since he'd first spoken. 8 seconds of verbal de-escalation, building rapport, creating doubt. 8 seconds of hoping violence could be avoided. Time's up. What happened next would later be analyzed by law enforcement, replayed on security footage, and debated by self-defense experts. But for those present in that moment, it was simply impossible to fully process. One instant Xavier's gun was aimed at Amber's head, finger pulling the trigger. The next instant he was on the ground, weapons skittering across concrete, wrist broken at an angle bones weren't meant to bend. Nolan Curtis had closed 15 feet in less than 2 seconds. The real work was just beginning. Nolan's movement was a blur of controlled violence. His left hand shot out, gripping Xavier's wrist and rotating it in a precise arc that forced the weapon away from Amber's head while simultaneously applying pressure to the joint. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the concrete structure. Xavier screamed, his finger reflexively pulling the trigger. The bullet discharged harmlessly into the ceiling, raining concrete dust down on them all. Before the sound of the gunshot faded, Nolan had already stripped the weapon from Xavier's useless hand and delivered a palm strike to his solar plexus that dropped him to his knees, gasping for air. Total elapsed time, 2 seconds. Ashton Walsh reacted exactly as Nolan predicted a trained responder would, bringing his weapon around toward the new threat. But Nolan was already moving, using Xavier's collapsing body as a shield while closing the distance. He swept low, catching Ashton behind the knee while simultaneously redirecting the gun hand upward. Another shot fired into the ceiling. Nolan's elbow connected with Ashton's temple with calculated force, enough to disorient but not cause permanent damage. As Ashton stumbled, Nolan executed a textbook disarm, twisting the weapon free and immediately checking the chamber, confirming the round count, assessing the threat level. 4 seconds total. Preston Ford stood frozen, his weapon hanging loosely at his side, mind unable to process the speed of what had just occurred. When Nolan turned toward him, Preston's survival instincts finally kicked in. He dropped his gun and raised both hands in surrender. On the ground, hands behind your head, Nolan commanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in crisis situations. Preston complied immediately, dropping to his knees and lacing his fingers behind his skull. Xavier was still curled on the ground, cradling his shattered wrist. Ashton was conscious but dazed, offering no resistance as Nolan efficiently secured all 3 weapons, ejecting magazines and clearing chambers with practiced ease. 6 seconds. Only then did Nolan turn his attention to Amber Maxwell, who remained on her knees, trembling violently, unable to process her sudden transition from certain death to safety. Her designer suit was dusty from the concrete floor, her carefully styled hair disheveled, mascara streaking down her face. "Are you injured?" Nolan asked, his voice softening, as he approached her. Amber couldn't speak, could only shake her head. Shock was setting in, the adrenaline crash hitting her system like a physical blow. "I need you to breathe," Nolan said gently, kneeling to her level. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Slow and steady. You're safe now." He pulled out his phone with one hand while keeping the secured weapons behind him, out of reach. "This is Nolan Curtis. I'm in the Meridian Tower parking garage. Level 3. We have an attempted armed assault situation. 3 suspects detained, 1 civilian victim, no serious injuries. I've secured 3 firearms. We need police and medical response." The 911 dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Sir, are you security personnel?" "No, ma'am. Just someone in the wrong place at the right time." 8 seconds. From the moment, Xavier pointed his gun at Amber's head to complete neutralization of the threat. 8 seconds that would define everything that followed. Sirens began wailing in. The distance growing rapidly closer. Security guards, from the building, burst through the stairwell doors, weapons drawn. Nolan immediately raised his free hand, the other still holding his phone. "Suspects are secured and disarmed," he called out clearly. "Victim is unharmed. Weapons are on the ground behind me." The lead security guard, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, assessed the scene with professional efficiency. 3 men on the ground in various states of injury and compliance. 1 businessman in janitorial casual wear standing protectively near the victim. 3 firearms, neatly arranged on concrete, magazines separated, clearly rendered safe by someone who knew what they were doing. "Sir, I need you to step away from the weapons and keep your hands visible," she said, her tone less aggressive than procedural. Nolan complied, moving to stand beside Amber, who had finally managed to get to her feet but seemed unsteady. Without thinking, he offered his arm for support. She gripped it with surprising strength, still unable to speak. Police arrived within 3 minutes, flooding the parking garage with officers and flashing lights. Paramedics followed, immediately attending to Xavier's broken wrist, while other officers secured Preston and Ashton in handcuffs. Detective Ryder Maxwell, no relation to Amber despite the shared surname, took charge of the scene. He was a 20-year veteran with the Brookhaven Police Department, and he'd seen enough crime scenes to recognize when something didn't fit the usual pattern. "Let me get this straight," he said after taking preliminary statements from the security guards. 3 armed suspects, 1 civilian victim, and you, a janitor, somehow disarmed all 3 in less than 10 seconds? 8 seconds, Nolan corrected quietly. "And I was just trying to get back to my daughter's birthday dinner." Detective Maxwell studied Nolan with increased interest. The calm demeanor, the precise language, the way he stood, with perfect situational awareness despite appearing relaxed. "You have training." "I used to," Nolan acknowledged. "Different life. Special forces." It wasn't really a question. Nolan didn't confirm or deny, simply met the detective's gaze with patient silence. "Right," Maxwell said, recognizing that particular brand of operational security. "We'll need a full statement, but that can wait until we process the scene, miss. Maxwell needs medical evaluation." Amber finally found her voice. "I'm fine. I just want to go home." "Standard procedure, ma'am," the detective said. "You've experienced significant trauma. Let the paramedics check you out." As they led Amber toward the ambulance, she looked back at Nolan. "Wait, I don't even know your name." "Nolan Curtis." "Nolan Curtis," she repeated, committing it to memory. "You saved my life. I did what needed to be done. Why? You could have just called the police, stayed out of it. Why risk yourself for a stranger?" Nolan thought of Lily, waiting at the restaurant, probably worried by now. He thought of Rebecca's final words about teaching their daughter what really matters. He thought of the kind of man he wanted to be, The kind of example he wanted to set, because someone's daughter needed her father to come home. He said simply. Seemed like someone else's company might need their CEO to do the same. Before Amber could respond, Nolan's phone rang. The restaurant. He answered immediately. Mr. Curtis. This is Jeremy at Harborview Grill. Your daughter is here, and she's getting quite worried. Is everything all right? I'm fine, Jeremy. There was an emergency situation, but it's resolved. Can you tell Lily I'll be there in 15 minutes? Order her the appetizer she likes, and tell her daddy will be there soon. Whatever she wants, put it on my tab. After hanging up, Nolan turned to Detective Maxwell. I need to get to my daughter. It's her birthday dinner. Can we do the detailed statement tomorrow? Maxwell hesitated, then nodded. Give us your contact information. We'll call you tomorrow morning. But Mr. Curtis, don't leave town. We'll have a lot of questions. I'm not going anywhere. As Nolan walked toward the exit, one of the paramedics called out. Sir, you're bleeding. That's a graze wound on your shoulder. Nolan glanced down. In the chaos, he hadn't noticed that one of the wild shots had clipped him, tearing through his jacket and shirt to leave a shallow furrow across his shoulder muscle. Now that he was aware of it, the pain began registering. I'll clean it at home, he said. That needs stitches, the paramedic insisted. Tomorrow. Right now, I have a birthday dinner to get to. He left the parking garage, leaving behind 3 would-be killers, a shaken billionaire, and a dozen police officers, all wondering exactly who Nolan Curtis really was. Behind him, Amber Maxwell watched him go, a man who'd appeared from nowhere, saved her life with impossible skill, and then simply walked away to keep a promise to his daughter. She didn't know it yet, but she'd spend the rest of the night unable to stop thinking about him. Didn't know that by morning, her entire team would be investigating his background. Didn't know that what they'd discover would change everything she thought she understood about her company, her choices, and the true cost of the algorithms that had made her billions. All she knew in that moment was that Nolan Curtis was unlike anyone she'd ever met. And somehow, she knew their story was far from over. Amber Maxwell sat in her penthouse at 3 a.m, unable to sleep. The police had cleared her medically, her security team had swept her apartment, and her assistant had rescheduled tomorrow's meetings. Everything was returning to normal. Except nothing felt normal anymore. She kept seeing the moment when Xavier Grant's finger had tightened on the trigger. Kept feeling the cold certainty of death. Then the impossible blur of movement, and suddenly she was alive, and Nolan Curtis was standing there like violence was just another problem to solve efficiently. Her hands still shook when she tried to hold her wine glass. Her phone showed 47 missed calls from board members, investors, and media outlets. News of the parking garage incident had already leaked. Tech CEO nearly killed in armed assault. Mysterious hero saves billionaire. The story was spreading across social media, though details were scarce since police hadn't released official statements yet. Amber opened her laptop and did what she always did when faced with unknowns. She gathered data. Nolan Curtis. She typed into her company's proprietary search algorithm, the same one that had made Nextech Solutions billions by aggregating public records, social media, employment histories, and financial data into comprehensive profiles. The results appeared within seconds. Nolan James Curtis, age 37, current residence, Oak Ridge District, Brookhaven, employment, custodial staff at Pembroke Elementary School, hired 4 years ago, previous employment, Wilson Security Consulting, terminated after 6 months. Before that, a significant gap in civilian employment records. But it was his earlier history that made Amber lean closer to the screen. Special Operations Forces, 12 years of service, multiple deployments, specific locations redacted. Honorable discharge 4 years ago. Commendations for valor. Details classified. The kind of service record that spoke volumes through what it didn't say. There you are, Amber whispered. That's who you were. She dug deeper. Marriage record to Rebecca Ann Curtis, née Thompson, 13 years ago. Birth record for Lily Grace Curtis, 9 years ago. Then the death certificate that explained everything. Rebecca Curtis, deceased 4 years ago. Cause of death, metastatic cancer. Amber's chest tightened. He'd lost his wife the same year he left military service. The timeline suggested he'd given up his career to care for her, then buried her, and somehow kept going for their daughter's sake. The financial records painted a stark picture. Medical debt, $87,000. Still in active repayment. Annual income, $32,000. Rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood. No car, public transportation passes, no luxury purchases, no entertainment subscriptions, nothing beyond basic necessities. This was a man living on the absolute edge of financial survival, working a job far below his capabilities, all while raising a daughter alone. Amber pulled up the insurance claims database, the one Nextech's algorithms had helped design. She entered Rebecca Curtis's information, and her breath caught when the denial appeared. Experimental treatment for stage 4 cancer. Denied. Reason: insufficient clinical evidence of efficacy. Risk assessment: high probability of treatment failure. Cost-benefit analysis: not approved. The algorithm had flagged Rebecca Curtis as a poor investment, just like it had flagged Diana Grant, Xavier's wife, just like it had flagged thousands of others whose lives were reduced to probability percentages and cost projections. Amber felt sick. She'd built her empire on efficiency, on using data to make better decisions than human judgment alone could manage. She'd genuinely believed she was improving systems, making them more rational and fair. The algorithm didn't care about race, gender, or socioeconomic status. It only cared about numbers. But numbers represented people, real people like Rebecca Curtis, who'd left behind a husband and daughter. Real people like Diana Grant, who died while her insurance company calculated profit margins. The man who'd saved her life tonight had every reason to hate her. To let Xavier pull that trigger. To walk away and let her die the same way the system had let his wife die. Instead, he'd risked himself to save her, then walked away to keep a promise to his daughter. Amber pulled out her phone and called her head of security. "Harrison, I need you to arrange something for me." "Miss Maxwell, it's 3 in the morning. I'm aware. I need a comprehensive security detail assigned to Nolan Curtis and his daughter. Discreet but thorough. Xavier Grant has accomplices who might blame Curtis for the arrests." "Already arranged," Harrison replied. Detective Maxwell requested the same thing. "We have teams rotating surveillance on the Curtis residence." "Good. I also want to set up a meeting with Curtis. Tomorrow, if possible. I'll reach out through the police department. Is there anything else?" Amber hesitated. "Pull the complete file on the Diana Grant and Rebecca Curtis insurance claims. I want every detail, every decision point, every person who touched those cases. May I ask why?" "Because I need to understand exactly what we did, what I did." After hanging up, Amber stood at her window, watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, Nolan Curtis was probably asleep in his modest apartment, his daughter safe in the next room, completely unaware that his life was about to change. Or perhaps he wasn't asleep. Perhaps he was awake like her, replaying the violence, processing the adrenaline, checking and rechecking the locks, because once you've seen how quickly safety can shatter, you never quite trust it again. She understood that now. The illusion of control she'd built with her wealth and algorithms had been destroyed in 8 seconds. All her money, all her power, all her carefully constructed walls had meant nothing when confronted with 3 determined men and loaded weapons. Only Nolan Curtis had meant something in that moment. His skill, his courage, his choice to intervene. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant. "Media requests coming in fast. They want a statement about the parking garage incident." "How should I respond?" Amber typed back. "No comment until police conclude their investigation." and find out if any news outlets got footage or photos of Nolan Curtis. If they did, pay whatever it costs to keep his image out of the press. He didn't ask for this attention. The next morning, Nolan woke to his phone buzzing insistently. He'd stayed up late with Lily, salvaging what they could of her birthday dinner after returning from giving his statement to the police. She'd been worried but understanding, accepting his explanation that he'd helped someone in trouble. Now, his phone showed a dozen missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Reporters, he guessed. Somehow the story had gotten out. A knock at his door made him tense. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in a professional suit, clearly not a threat, but equally clearly not a neighbor. "Mr. Curtis, I'm Elise Porter, assistant to Amber Maxwell. She'd like to meet with you today, at your convenience, to thank you properly and discuss a few matters." Nolan opened the door but didn't invite her in. "I don't need thanks. I'm glad she's safe. That's enough." "She anticipated you might say that," Elise replied, unperturbed. "She asked me to tell you this isn't about a reward. It's about information you deserve to have. Information about your wife's insurance claim." Nolan's expression hardened. "What about it?" "I can't discuss the details here. But Miss Maxwell discovered something last night while researching your background, something she believes you have a right to know." Elise held out a business card. "Please, one meeting, 1 hour. After that, if you want nothing more to do with Nextech Solutions, we'll respect that completely." Nolan took the card, studying it. Part of him wanted to refuse, to maintain the careful distance he'd built between his past and present. But another part, the part that had spent 4 years wondering if there'd been something more he could have done to save Rebecca, needed to know. When and where? Her office, noon today. I'll have a car sent to pick you up. I'll take the bus. Just give me the address. After Elise left, Nolan stood in his doorway, card in hand, knowing he was about to step into a world he'd deliberately avoided. A world of wealth and power and corporate decisions that destroyed lives with casual efficiency. He should stay away. Should protect Lily from any connection to people like Amber Maxwell. Should maintain the simple, honest life he'd built from the ruins of his past. But he'd learned long ago that some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed. And something told him that whatever information Amber Maxwell had discovered, it would change everything. The Nextech Solutions headquarters occupied 40 floors of glass and steel in Brookhaven's financial district. Nolan stood in the lobby, feeling conspicuously out of place in his worn jeans and flannel shirt among executives in designer suits. Elise Porter appeared promptly at noon. "Mr. Curtis, thank you for coming. Please follow me." The private elevator moved so smoothly Nolan barely felt the ascent to the 40th floor. When the doors opened, he stepped into an executive suite that probably cost more than he'd earn in a decade. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic city views. Original artwork hung on walls. Everything whispered wealth and power. Amber Maxwell stood by the windows, looking out at the skyline. She turned when he entered, and Nolan was struck by how different she appeared from the terrified woman in the parking garage. She'd reconstructed her armor of confidence and control, though he could see the cracks if he looked closely. The way her hands clasped together slightly too tight, the barely perceptible tension in her shoulders. "Mr. Curtis, thank you for coming." She gestured to a seating area with leather chairs. "Please, sit. I'll stand, thanks. You said you had information about my wife's insurance claim." Amber's carefully maintained composure slipped slightly. Direct. "I can appreciate that. Would you like coffee? Water? Information?" Nolan repeated. "That's all I came for." Amber nodded, moving to her desk. She pulled out a thick folder. "Last night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what happened. About who you were. About how you just walked away without asking for anything. So I did what I always do when I have questions. I researched." She opened the folder, revealing page after page of documents. "I found your service record, though most of it's classified. I found your wife's death certificate. And then I found something that made me understand why Xavier Grant wanted to kill me." Nolan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Rebecca Curtis, stage 4 cancer, applied for experimental immunotherapy treatment 4 years ago. Claim denied by her insurance provider, Sentinel Health Group. The denial was generated by an assessment algorithm. Amber's voice wavered slightly. "An algorithm my company developed." The words hung in the air like a confession. Nolan remained motionless, processing this information with the same tactical calm he'd shown in the parking garage. But inside, something cold and sharp was cutting through his carefully maintained control. "Your algorithm," he said quietly. Nextech Solutions designed the health assessment software that Sentinel and 24 other insurance companies use. We built it to reduce fraudulent claims and improve decision consistency. We believed we were making the system better, more fair. Amber looked down at the papers. "We were wrong." She pulled out another document. "The algorithm flagged your wife as high risk, low probability of successful treatment outcome. It calculated that the experimental therapy had only a 22% historical success rate for her specific cancer type. The cost was $90,000. The algorithm determined it wasn't cost-effective." 22%, Nolan repeated. "That was her chance. 1 in 5. Better odds than I faced on half my operations overseas. But apparently not good enough for a spreadsheet." "I'm so sorry," Amber said. And the words sounded hollow even to her. What did sorry mean against the death of someone's wife? Against a daughter growing up without her mother? "Why are you telling me this?" Nolan asked. "Guilt? Conscience? Some kind of therapy to make yourself feel better about the system you built?" The accusation hit home. Amber flinched. "Because you saved my life last night without knowing any of this. And you deserve to understand that the person you saved was part of the reason your wife died." "Part of the reason," Nolan said, voice dangerously quiet. "You mean you killed her?" "The algorithm made the decision." "You built the algorithm." Nolan took a step forward. "You programmed it to value profit over people. You taught it that some lives aren't worth saving if the numbers don't add up. So yes, Miss Maxwell, you killed her. You and everyone else who decided that efficiency matters more than humanity." Amber's eyes filled with tears. But she didn't look away. Didn't make excuses. "You're right. I did. Not directly, not consciously, but the result is the same. Rebecca Curtis died, at least partly, because of choices I made when building that system." "And how many others?" Nolan asked. "How many Diana Grants? How many people reduced to percentages and probability curves?" "Thousands," Amber admitted, voice breaking. "The algorithm processed approximately 40,000 claims in its first year alone. Denial rate was 31%. That's over 12,000 claims rejected, many of them for life-saving treatments." The numbers were staggering. Nolan felt dizzy. He'd known the system was broken, had raged against it during Rebecca's final months. But he'd never imagined the scale, never imagined that one company's algorithm could touch so many lives. "I've been reviewing every denied claim," Amber continued. Referencing against patient outcomes. The mortality rate for denied claimants is 68% within 2 years. That means roughly 8,000 people died, at least partially, because my algorithm decided they weren't worth saving. 8,000. Nolan whispered. 8,000 Rebeccas. 8,000 families destroyed. 8,000 Lilies growing up without parents. "I'm shutting it down," Amber said. "The algorithm, the contracts, all of it. I'm pulling Nextech out of the health insurance assessment business entirely." "That's it? You shut down one product, and your conscience is clear?" "No. My conscience will never be clear." Amber's voice strengthened. "But I can try to make amends. I'm establishing a foundation to provide grants for families denied coverage." I'm funding research into the treatments the algorithm rejected, and I'm using every resource I have to expose the systemic problems in health insurance that made something like this possible in the first place. Nolan stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the monster he'd been constructing in his mind. She wasn't evil. She was something more complicated and perhaps more dangerous. A well-intentioned person who'd caused immense harm through distance and abstraction. "Why did you save me?" Amber asked suddenly. "Last night, when you realized who I was, you must have understood what my company represented. You could have walked away, let Xavier finish what he started. Why didn't you?" Nolan was quiet for a long moment. "Because my daughter was waiting for me at a restaurant, and I needed to be able to look her in the eye and tell her I did the right thing, even when it was hard. Even when part of me wanted to walk away." "What's the right thing now?" Amber asked. "What do I do with this? How do I balance the scales?" "You can't," Nolan said simply. "You can't bring Rebecca back. Can't undo the 8,000 deaths. Can't erase the families you destroyed. All you can do is be better going forward, and accept that being better doesn't earn you forgiveness." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "The foundation you mentioned for denied claims. Make it real. Don't make it some tax write-off or PR stunt. Actually help people." "I will," Amber promised. "And Mr. Curtis, I know you don't want a reward, but your daughter deserves better than her father working himself to exhaustion while drowning in debt. Let me at least clear the medical bills, not as payment for saving me, but as the bare minimum restitution for what my company did to your family." Nolan's pride warred with practicality. The medical debt was crushing him, limiting Lily's opportunities, keeping them trapped in survival mode. But accepting money from Amber felt like betraying Rebecca's memory. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But right now, I need distance from all of this. From you." He left without looking back, leaving Amber alone in her expensive office, surrounded by the trappings of success that suddenly felt like monuments to failure. For 3 days after the meeting, Nolan tried to return to normal life. He showed up for his janitorial shifts at Pembroke Elementary, mopped floors, cleaned bathrooms, fixed broken equipment. He picked Lily up from school, helped with homework, made dinner. He pretended that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The medical bills sat on his kitchen table, $87,000 of debt that would take him 15 more years to pay off at his current rate. Every month, $400 went to collection agencies instead of to Lily's future. Every month, he chose between replacing her worn shoes or making an extra payment. Every month, the weight of that debt reminded him of Rebecca's final days, of treatments that came too late, of a system designed to profit from desperation. And now he knew exactly who had designed that system. On the 4th day, Elise Porter appeared at the school during his lunch break. She found him in the maintenance closet, organizing supplies. "Mr. Curtis, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to your boss." Nolan replied, without turning around. "This isn't about Miss Maxwell, it's about Xavier Grant." Elise's tone was urgent. "He made bail this morning." Nolan spun around. "How?" "His bail was set at $500,000. Someone paid it. We don't know who yet, but Detective Maxwell thinks it might be connected to a larger organization. People who want to use Grant's story to attack Nextech and other tech companies." She paused. "There's more. Grant's lawyers are building a defense around temporary insanity caused by grief. They're going to argue that companies like Nextech are the real criminals." "They're not wrong," Nolan said. "Maybe not, but Grant also made threats before being released. He said you're a traitor to people like him, that you chose the side of the corporations." Elise met his gaze directly. "Miss Maxwell believes you and your daughter might be in danger." Nolan's protective instincts flared immediately. "Lily?" He threatened Lily? Not directly, but the implication was clear. You interfered with what he saw as justice. Some people won't forgive that. Nolan's mind raced through tactical scenarios. Grant knew his name, could easily find his address. The apartment building had minimal security. Lily walked to and from school. There were a dozen vulnerabilities he'd ignored because he'd thought the threat was over. "What does Maxwell want?" he asked. "She's offering protection. Security detail for you and Lily. Monitored safe house if needed. Whatever it takes to keep you safe." "In exchange for what?" Elise hesitated. "Your story. She wants to hold a press conference, expose the full truth about the algorithm and its impact. She thinks having you there, explaining what happened to Rebecca, would give a human face to the thousands of denied claims, would make it impossible for the board to bury this quietly." Nolan laughed bitterly. "So she wants to use me. Use Rebecca's death for her redemption story." "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that." Nolan returned to organizing supplies, hands moving with aggressive precision. "She builds a system that kills thousands, realizes she might face consequences, and suddenly wants to be the hero who fixes everything. Well, she can find another prop for her performance." "Mr. Curtis, I understand your anger." "Do you?" Nolan spun around again. "Do you understand what it's like to watch someone you love waste away while bureaucrats debate whether her life has sufficient ROI? Do you know what it's like to explain to a 5-year-old why mommy isn't getting better, why the medicine stopped, why we can't afford the treatment that might save her?" Elise's composure cracked. "No, I don't. But I know Miss Maxwell is genuinely trying to make this right. She's risking her entire career, her relationship with the board, her reputation. This isn't performative. This is someone who realized she caused immense harm and is willing to sacrifice everything to fix it." "Good for her," Nolan said coldly. "Rebecca's still dead. My sacrifice doesn't unbury her." Before Elise could respond, Nolan's phone rang. The school office. "Mr. Curtis? There's a man here asking about your daughter. Says he's a friend of the family, but Lily doesn't recognize him. We're keeping her in the office as a precaution." Nolan's blood ran cold. "What does he look like?" "40s, short dark hair, wearing a gray jacket. He seems agitated." "Xavier Grant. It had to be. Lock the office doors. Call the police. I'm on my way." Nolan was already running. Elise struggling to keep up as he sprinted through the school hallways. When they reached the main office, Nolan saw Lily through the glass door, sitting with the secretary, looking confused and frightened. Outside the building, visible through the windows, Xavier Grant paced back and forth, arguing with the security guard who'd prevented him from entering. Detective Ryder Maxwell arrived within minutes, 2 patrol cars flanking his unmarked vehicle. Officers approached Grant with hands on their weapons. The confrontation was brief. Grant offered no resistance, simply stood with hands raised, face twisted in anguish rather than aggression. "I just wanted to talk," Grant said as they cuffed him. "I wanted him to understand that he saved the wrong person. That the system is still broken. That nothing's changed." Nolan emerged from the school building, Lily clutching his hand. Grant's eyes locked on them, and Nolan saw something that gave him pause. Not hatred, not violence. Just desperate, consuming grief that mirrored what he'd felt during Rebecca's final days. "You could have let her die," Grant called out. "You could have given me justice. Why did you save her?" "Because I'm not you," Nolan replied quietly. "Because choosing violence makes us part of the problem, not the solution." "Then what's the solution?" Grant's voice cracked. "How do we make them pay for what they did? How do we get justice for Diana? For Rebecca? For all the others?" Nolan looked at Lily, whose eyes were wide with confusion and fear, then at Elise standing nearby, then at the police officers surrounding them. "The solution isn't murder. It's exposure. It's forcing the system to change by making the cost of cruelty visible." He pulled out his phone and called the number on Elise's business card. Amber answered on the first ring. "Your press conference," Nolan said. "When?" We can schedule it for tomorrow, if you're willing. I'm willing. But we do this my way. Complete transparency. Every detail of Rebecca's case. Every denied claim you can document. Every death the algorithm contributed to. No corporate spin. No damage control. Just truth. Agreed, Amber said without hesitation. Complete truth. Nolan watched as police loaded Xavier Grant into the patrol car. And one more thing. Grant doesn't get thrown away. He gets help. Therapy. Support. Whatever he needs. He's a victim too, even if he made terrible choices. There was a long pause. I'll make sure he has the best care possible. After hanging up, Nolan knelt to Lily's level. Sweetheart, Daddy needs to do something important tomorrow. Something that might be on the news. It's about Mommy and helping other families like ours. Will it help people not be sad like you were? Lily asked. I hope so. Then you should do it. Mommy would want you to help people. That night, Nolan sat at his kitchen table with Amber's assistant, reviewing documents and preparing his statement. The medical bills still sat there, monument to a debt he couldn't escape. But maybe, just maybe, he could prevent other families from drowning under similar burdens. Elise noticed his gaze. Miss Maxwell authorized immediate payment of your medical debt. The check has already been processed. Consider it the first of many restitutions Nextech owes to affected families. Nolan wanted to refuse on principle, but he thought of Lily's worn shoes, the school supplies he couldn't afford, the field trips she'd missed because he couldn't pay the fees. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me. Thank yourself for being willing to tell the truth, even though it costs you something. What does it cost me? Elise smiled sadly. Privacy. Anonymity. The quiet life you've built. After tomorrow, everyone will know your story. Nolan. Curtis won't be just a janitor anymore. You'll be a symbol. Nolan looked at Rebecca's photograph on the wall, her bright smile captured forever in a moment of happiness. If being a symbol helps even one family avoid what we went through, it's worth it. He pulled out a pen and began writing his statement, choosing each word with careful precision. This wasn't about revenge or personal justice. This was about forcing a broken system to face its victims, to see the human cost of algorithmic efficiency. Tomorrow, the world would learn the truth about Nextech's algorithm. Tomorrow, Amber Maxwell would begin her public reckoning. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, Nolan Curtis sat in his modest apartment, cleared of debt for the first time in years, and allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, Rebecca's death might save someone else's life. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't closure, but it was something. And right now, something was enough. The Nextech Solutions press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning at the Brookhaven Convention Center. By 9:30, every seat was filled with journalists, technology reporters, health policy analysts, and families whose claims had been denied by the algorithm. Camera crews from every major network lined the back wall. Backstage, Nolan adjusted his tie for the 5th time. He'd bought a suit for the occasion, his first in years. Lily sat beside him, swinging her legs from a chair that was too tall for her, wearing her best dress and clutching a photograph of Rebecca. You look handsome, Daddy, she said. Thank you, sweetheart. You look beautiful. Are you scared? Nolan considered lying, then remembered his promise to always be honest with her. A little. Speaking in front of crowds isn't my favorite thing. Just pretend you're talking to me, Lily suggested. Tell them about Mommy like you tell me stories before bed. Simple wisdom from a 9-year-old. Nolan kissed the top of her head. That's good advice. Amber appeared, looking equally nervous in a simple black suit, absent her usual designer accessories. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Thank you for doing this. I know it costs you. Before Nolan could respond, Elise rushed over, phone in hand, face pale. We have a problem. The board has called an emergency vote. They're trying to remove you as CEO before the press conference starts. Amber's expression hardened. Let them try. I'm still the majority shareholder. They can't remove me without cause. They're arguing that this press conference represents gross negligence and willful destruction of shareholder value. They have lawyers standing by. Then my lawyers will fight them. Amber checked her watch. We're starting in 5 minutes whether they like it or not. A man in an expensive suit pushed through the backstage area, flanked by 2 other board members, Corey Daniels, Nextech's chief financial officer, and Amber's primary rival for control of the company. Amber, you can't do this, Daniels said without preamble. You're about to destroy everything we've built. The algorithm represents 40% of our revenue. Our stock is already down 23% since news of your intentions leaked. Good, Amber replied coldly. Maybe it should fall further. You're being irrational, emotional. One incident doesn't invalidate years of successful implementation. 8,000 deaths, Nolan interrupted, his voice quiet, but carrying an edge that made Daniels step back. That's not one incident. That's 8,000 incidents. 8,000 families destroyed so your stock price could climb. Daniels' eyes narrowed. And who are you? The janitor whose wife your algorithm killed. The man who saved your CEO's life when someone else decided she should face consequences for your company's choices. We're facing multiple lawsuits because of your intervention. Daniels shot back. Xavier Grant's lawyers are suing for wrongful restraint. Other families are filing class action suits. You've opened us up to billions in liability. Then you should have built a better system, Nolan said simply. Amber stepped between them. Corey, this is happening. You can support it or fight it, but you can't stop it. Now either get out of my way or stand beside me on that stage and help make this right. Daniels stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. The board will have your resignation by tomorrow, he called back. They're welcome to try. The stage manager signaled that it was time. Amber took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked onto the stage to a barrage of camera flashes and shouted questions. Good morning, she began, waiting for the noise to settle. Thank you all for coming. Today, I'm here to address the serious failings of Nextech Solutions and to announce major changes to our business practices and corporate mission. She paused, looking out at the audience. In the front row sat families holding photographs of deceased loved ones. Their faces showed hope mixed with skepticism, people who'd been disappointed by the system too many times to trust easily. 4 years ago, Nextech developed an algorithm designed to assess health insurance claims for efficiency and consistency. We believed we were improving a broken system, making decisions more fair by removing human bias. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't the typical corporate non-apology. This was something different. Our algorithm didn't remove bias. It simply replaced human bias with algorithmic bias. And in doing so, it contributed to the deaths of thousands of people who deserved better, who deserved to be seen as more than probability percentages and cost-benefit ratios. Amber's voice grew stronger, more passionate. I'm here today to take full responsibility for those failures. As CEO, as the person who approved this system, I failed the people it was supposed to serve. I failed families like the Grants, the Curtis family, and thousands of others whose names I don't even know. She gestured to Nolan, who stood at the side of the stage with Lily. Nolan Curtis is here today to tell his story. But first, I want to announce the immediate and permanent changes Nextech is implementing, effective immediately. She pulled out a document, reading from it with clear, unwavering voice. First, Nextech is terminating all contracts related to health insurance claim assessment. The algorithm will be permanently deactivated. Second, we are establishing the Rebecca Curtis Foundation with an initial endowment of $200 million to provide grants for families denied insurance coverage for life-saving treatments. The audience erupted. $200 million. Not the token gesture of a guilty corporation, but a genuine commitment of resources. Third, Amber continued over the noise. We are funding independent research into every claim denied by our algorithm over the past 4 years. Families who were wrongfully denied will receive full compensation, plus damages. Fourth, I am personally lobbying for federal legislation to regulate health assessment algorithms and establish patient advocacy protections. She set down the paper. And finally, I'm inviting Nolan Curtis to join Nextech's board of directors, specifically to oversee our new patient advocacy division, because the only way to ensure we never repeat these failures is to include voices of the people we've harmed in our decision-making process. All eyes turned to Nolan, who looked as surprised as everyone else by this announcement. They hadn't discussed this. Amber had blindsided him, publicly offering a position he hadn't asked for. Nolan stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, Lily holding his other hand. For a moment, he just stood there, overwhelmed by the lights and attention. Then he looked down at Lily, at Rebecca's photograph she held, and found his voice. My name is Nolan Curtis. 4 years ago, my wife Rebecca died of cancer. She was 33 years old. Our daughter was 5. His voice was steady, matter of fact, the tone of someone who'd learned to function through grief. The treatment that might have saved her was denied by an algorithm that decided she had only a 22% chance of survival. Someone, somewhere, had programmed that algorithm to consider 22% insufficient. He paused, letting that sink in. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not comfortable with attention. I'm a janitor at my daughter's elementary school. But I'm here today because silence protects broken systems. Silence lets companies hide behind corporate structures and legal immunity. Silence means more families will suffer what mine suffered. Nolan looked directly at the cameras. Rebecca was brilliant, kind, and loved. She was a teacher who spent her own money on supplies for students whose families couldn't afford them. She volunteered at the hospital where she'd eventually die, reading to patients in the cancer ward. She was everything good in this world, and an algorithm reduced her to a number. His voice hardened. That's unacceptable. That's inexcusable. And if Miss Maxwell is serious about change, if Nextech is serious about making amends, then I'll help them do it. Not because I forgive them, not because money can replace what was taken, but because my daughter deserves to grow up in a world where algorithms serve humanity, not profit margins. The press conference continued for another hour, with journalists asking pointed questions that Amber answered with uncomfortable honesty. She didn't deflect, didn't spin, simply acknowledged failure and outlined concrete steps toward redemption. By noon, the story had gone viral. Tech CEO admits algorithm killed thousands, dominated headlines. Nextech stock plummeted 38%. 3 board members resigned. Daniel sent his formal demand for Amber's resignation. She ignored it, instead spending the afternoon in meetings with patient advocacy groups, health policy experts, and families affected by the algorithm. Each conversation was difficult, each apology inadequate, but she showed up, listened, and committed resources. That evening, as staff cleared the convention center, Nolan found Amber sitting alone, looking exhausted. You ambushed me with that board position, he said. I know, I'm sorry, but I meant it. Will you consider it? Nolan sat beside her. I'm not qualified to serve on a technology company's board. You're qualified to tell us when we're losing sight of what matters. That's more valuable than any MBA. He considered this. I'd need training, support, and I won't be anyone's token. You'll have everything you need. And Nolan? You'd never be a token. You're the conscience I should have had years ago. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 people bound by tragedy and circumstance, trying to build something meaningful from the wreckage. Lily thinks her mother sent you to me, Nolan said finally. Some kind of cosmic plan. What do you think? I think the universe doesn't plan anything. I think terrible things happen, and we choose how to respond. You chose to face what you'd done. That's worth something. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was recognition. And for now, that was enough. 6 months later, Nolan stood in his new office at Nextech Solutions, still adjusting to the dramatic shift his life had taken. The corner office on the 35th floor featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Brookhaven, a standing desk, and walls he decorated with Lily's artwork rather than corporate achievements. Director of Patient Advocacy. The title still felt surreal. He'd left his janitorial position at Pembroke Elementary 3 months ago, though he still volunteered there on weekends, unwilling to completely sever ties with the work that had sustained him through his darkest years. The new salary meant Lily could take piano lessons, they could afford a modest house with a yard, and for the first time since Rebecca's death, Nolan wasn't constantly calculating whether they could afford basic necessities. But the real change wasn't financial. It was purpose. The Rebecca Curtis Foundation had distributed $43 million in its first 6 months, covering treatments for over 300 families. Nolan personally reviewed each application, ensuring the money reached people who genuinely needed it, not fraudsters exploiting the system. He'd also overseen the independent review of Nextech's algorithm-denied claims. The findings were worse than anyone anticipated. Of the 12,000 denied claims, nearly 9,000 had been wrongful denials, cases where human review should have overridden the algorithm's recommendation. Nextech had paid out $1.4 billion in compensation so far, with more claims still being processed. The company had survived, though radically transformed. The board had attempted to remove Amber as CEO, but failed when major institutional investors, swayed by the positive press around the foundation, backed her leadership. Corey Daniels and 2 other board members had resigned, replaced by patient advocates and ethicists. Amber's office was down the hall now. They developed an unusual friendship, built on shared mission rather than shared experience. She was no longer just the CEO who'd built a deadly algorithm. She was someone genuinely trying to use her power for good, though she carried the weight of past failures in the lines around her eyes. A knock on Nolan's door. Elise entered, carrying a folder. The applications for the next funding round, 37 families, all vetted. I need your approval by Friday. I'll review them tonight, Nolan promised. Also, there's someone here to see you, Xavier Grant. He's requesting a meeting. Nolan tensed. Grant had been released from jail 2 months ago, after pleading guilty to reduced charges. Thanks to Amber's intervention and Nolan's testimony about Grant's exploitation by corporate interests, he'd received probation rather than prison time, with mandatory therapy and community service. Send him in, Nolan said. Grant entered looking different from their last encounter, cleaner, calmer, though grief still haunted his eyes. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. What can I do for you, Xavier? I wanted to apologize. For threatening you. For going after your daughter. For everything. Grant sat down, uninvited, shoulders slumped. I was drowning in anger, couldn't see past my own pain. You were trying to help, and I saw you as the enemy. You were manipulated, Nolan said. People exploited your grief for their own purposes. I don't excuse what you did, but I understand it. I'm working with a veteran support group now, Grant continued, helping other people who've lost family members to systemic failures, trying to channel the anger into something constructive instead of destructive. That's good. Diana would be proud. Grant's eyes welled. Would she? I nearly killed someone, nearly destroyed what little I had left. But you didn't. You made terrible choices, but you're choosing differently now. That's what matters. They talked for another 20 minutes, 2 men bound by loss, finding common ground in their attempts to move forward. When Grant left, Nolan felt something shift inside him. Not closure, exactly, but something like acceptance. That pain could transform into purpose. That evening, Nolan picked Lily up from her piano lesson. At 10 years old now, she was growing rapidly, already showing signs of becoming a teenager. She chattered about her upcoming recital, about her friends, about a science project on nebulae. Miss Maxwell asked if we want to come to her house for dinner Friday, Lily said as they drove home. She's making spaghetti. Can we go? Nolan glanced at his daughter. You like spending time with her? She's nice. And she's funny when she's not being all serious and businesslike. Plus, she has that big telescope on her roof. She promised to show me Saturn's rings. Over the past months, Amber had become a regular presence in their lives. Not intrusive, but consistent. She attended Lily's school events, remembered her birthday, showed genuine interest in her hobbies. It had started as guilt-driven attention but had evolved into something more authentic. "Sure," Nolan said, "we can go." "Do you like her, Daddy?" Lily asked with the directness only kids possessed. "I respect her. She made terrible mistakes, but she's working hard to fix them." "That's not what I meant," Lily said, grinning. "Do you like her?" "Like her?" Nolan felt his face warm. "That's complicated, Lily. Mommy would want you to be happy," Lily said, suddenly serious. "She told me before she died. She made me promise that if you ever found someone who made you smile again, I should tell you it's okay." Nolan pulled the car over, turning to look at his daughter. "She said that?" Lily nodded. "She said loving someone new doesn't mean forgetting someone old. It just means your heart has room for more people." Nolan felt tears forming. Rebecca, always thinking ahead, always trying to protect them even from beyond the grave. "I miss her every day," he said. "Me too. But I like seeing you smile more. You smile a lot more now than you used to." That Friday, they had dinner at Amber's penthouse. The space had changed since Nolan's first visit. The cold, impersonal corporate showcase had given way to something warmer. Photographs adorned the walls now, including one of the three of them at the foundation's ribbon-cutting ceremony. Books cluttered the coffee table. Lily's drawings hung on the refrigerator. After dinner, while Lily explored the rooftop telescope, Amber and Nolan stood at the windows, watching the city lights. "She's remarkable," Amber said, nodding toward Lily. "So smart, so kind. You've done an incredible job raising her. Rebecca deserves most of the credit. She built the foundation even if she couldn't see the house completed." "I've been thinking," Amber said hesitantly, "about what happens next. The foundation is established. The reforms are in place. Nextech is stable. What do I do with the rest of my life?" "What do you want to do?" "I want to keep making amends. But I also want to live, not just work. I want relationships that matter, not just business transactions." She looked at him. "I want to know if there's room in your life for someone like me. Not as the CEO trying to fix her mistakes, but as someone who values you and Lily beyond what you represent." Nolan was quiet for a long time. 6 months ago, I would have said no. Would have told you that the distance between us was too great, that what your company did to Rebecca made anything between us impossible. And now I think Rebecca was wiser than I gave her credit for. She understood that holding on to anger only poisons. Rebecca was wiser than I gave her credit for. Person carrying it. That moving forward doesn't mean forgetting the past, just refusing to let it define the future. He turned to face Amber. "I'm not ready for anything serious. May never be. But I'm open to seeing where this goes. To building a friendship that might become something more. If you're patient, if you understand that I come with complications." Amber smiled, genuine warmth reaching her eyes. "I can do patient. And Nolan? Everyone comes with complications. Yours just happened to intersect with mine in ways neither of us expected." On the rooftop, Lily had successfully located Saturn, its rings visible through the powerful telescope. She called down to them, excited, wanting them to see. They climbed the stairs together, not quite holding hands but walking close enough that their shoulders touched. And for the first time in years, Nolan allowed himself to feel something other than grief and obligation. Something tentative and fragile, but real. Something that might, with time and care, grow into hope. 1 year after the press conference, the Rebecca Curtis Foundation held its first annual gala at the Brookhaven Grand Hotel. The ballroom glittered with soft lighting and elegant decorations, but the real beauty was in the faces of the families present, people whose lives had been saved by treatments the foundation funded. Nolan stood near the stage in a well-fitted suit, no longer uncomfortable with formal events, watching as Amber addressed the crowd. She'd grown into her role as reformed CEO, using her platform to advocate for healthcare reform with the same intensity she'd once applied to maximizing profits. In our first year, the Rebecca Curtis Foundation has provided funding for over 800 families, Amber announced to enthusiastic applause. We've covered treatments that insurance companies denied, resulting in a 73% survival rate among recipients. That's 584 lives saved. 584 families who didn't have to experience what the Curtis family endured. She paused, emotion evident in her voice. But numbers only tell part of the story. Behind each statistic is a person, a family, a future that almost didn't happen. Tonight, some of those families are here to share their experiences. One by one, people took the stage. A mother whose son's leukemia treatment had been funded. A husband whose wife's experimental surgery had given them 5 more years together. A teenager who'd survived a rare genetic disorder thanks to gene therapy the algorithm had once flagged as too expensive. Each story was a testament to what happened when corporations chose people over profit. Lily, now 11 years old and wearing a blue dress that Rebecca would have loved, stood backstage waiting for her turn. She'd insisted on speaking tonight despite Nolan's concerns about putting her in the spotlight. "You're sure about this, sweetheart?" he asked. "I'm sure. Daddy, people need to know about Mommy, not just that she died, but who she was." When Lily took the stage, the ballroom fell silent. This young girl, poised beyond her years, represented everything the foundation fought for. "My name is Lily Curtis," she began, voice clear and strong. "My mom died when I was 5 years old. For a long time, I was angry about that. Angry at the sickness, angry at the doctors who couldn't save her, angry at a world that felt unfair." She held up a photograph of Rebecca. "But my mom taught me something before she died. She said that love is bigger than anger, and that helping others is how we honor the people we've lost. She said that even when bad things happen, we get to choose what we do next." Lily looked at her father, then at Amber. "My dad chose to save someone's life even though he was hurting. Miss Maxwell chose to fix the mistakes her company made even though it was hard. And now, because of their choices, hundreds of families don't have to feel the sadness I felt." She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "That's what Mommy meant. We can't stop bad things from happening, but we can make sure something good comes from them. The Rebecca Curtis Foundation is the good that came from something bad, and I think Mommy would be really proud of that." The applause was thunderous. There wasn't a dry eye in the ballroom. Later, as the gala wound down, Nolan found Amber on the balcony, looking out at the city. He handed her a glass of champagne. "You did good," he said. "We did good," she corrected. "None of this happens without you. None of this happens without Rebecca," Nolan countered. "She's still teaching us, even now." Amber turned to him. "Do you think she'd approve? Of us, I mean." Over the past year, their friendship had deepened into something neither had quite defined. They had dinner weekly, spent weekends together with Lily, attended school events as a unit. It wasn't quite dating, but it wasn't just professional collaboration either. "I think," Nolan said slowly, "that Rebecca would say love isn't a finite resource, that opening your heart to new people doesn't diminish what you felt for the ones you've lost. It just proves you're capable of healing." Amber smiled. "That's a yes then?" "That's a yes." Inside, Lily was showing Xavier Grant's son how to use the telescope set up for the gala's stargazing activity. Grant himself stood nearby, now working full-time for the Foundation's outreach program, helping other families navigate the healthcare system he'd once tried to destroy. Redemption wasn't linear, Nolan had learned. It was messy, complicated, full of setbacks and small victories. But it was possible. For Grant, for Amber, for himself. The city sparkled below them, millions of individual lights combining to push back the darkness. That's what they'd built, Nolan thought. Not a perfect system, but a better one. Not erasure of past pain, but transformation of it into purpose. Lily appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. "Ready to go home, Daddy?" "Almost. One more minute." They stood together, the three of them, looking out at a future that finally held promise. Somewhere in the stars above, in the Horsehead Nebula that Lily loved so much, Rebecca watched over them. And if she could speak, Nolan thought she'd say exactly what Lily had said on stage. Darkness doesn't destroy light. It reveals it. And sometimes, the brightest light emerges from the deepest darkness. They'd found their light, together. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.